One class acquires the properties from another class, or it inherits, or it acquires the property from other class, that is called inheritance. Private member cannot be inherited, but the public members of base class becomes the private in the derived class. This is a derived class. Visibility mode is protected, so it is protected inheritance. And this is student, it is the base class, same what we used in the base class here. Dear students, welcome to CS classes. I am Ravi Kumar KR, lecturer in computer science, Vidhyaashram PU College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. Students, let us start our session with the new chapter, that is chapter 10, Inheritance. In this session, in the chapter, now let us see the weightage of the chapter. Here the weightage of the chapter is 6 marks. Here one MCQ for 1 mark and one 5 marks question. There are 2 questions and total weightage is 6 marks. So weightage of the chapter is 6 marks. In this session, we are going to learn the topics like inheritance, that is introduction to inheritance or definition of inheritance, and visibility mode, types of inheritance, abstract class, and virtual base class. These are the concepts to be covered in the chapter inheritance. Now let us start the session with the definition of inheritance. Now what is inheritance? Say, generally we are familiar with the word inheritance, and that is with respect to biological inheritance. So if I say a biological inheritance, that means, suppose if I say a boy or a girl, he resembles maybe a father or mother or maybe a brother or sister. So the resemblance of a child or maybe a son or a daughter like father, mother or anybody from the family, that is nothing but our biological inheritance. Now here with respect to programming concept, now we are going to learn or we are going to implement the inheritance. It is one of the OOPS concept in our programming. Now accordingly, let us see what is this inheritance. So here inheritance is the capability of one class to inherit properties from the another class. Here with respect to programming, and that too with respect to class. Now we have learned already what are classes and objects. So if there are more than one class, so one class acquires the properties from another class, or it inherits, or it acquires the property from other class, that is called inheritance with respect to programming concept. So it is a process in which one object acquires all the properties and behaviors of its parent object automatically. Here we use the word parent class as well as child class. So here the one of the object acquires the properties from their parent class, or it acquires few properties, or it can also acquire all the properties from some other class, that is from parent class or parent object automatically. So it allows us to create a new class. So, and it is called derived class from an existing class, that is called base class. And here, with respect to inheritance, say once the few properties or all the properties are inherited or acquired from some other class, obviously it is going to create one more new class. That new class is called derived class. And new class is derived from the base class or existing class. So this is the definition of inheritance with respect to programming concepts. Now let us move on to next slide, and here let us see the definition of base class and derived class. So what is a base class? It is a class whose properties, here whose properties are inherited by another class. It is also called as superclass. Here the base class. Base class is the class. From that class, the properties are inherited to some other class. So here, this is called base class and also called as superclass. Next definition is derived class. So it is a class that inherits the properties from the base class or classes. It is also known as subclass. So here this is a derived class. So this is a new class derived from the base class. So this is base class, derived class, it is superclass, and it is subclass. And it also referred as base class, is also referred as parent class, and this is child class. So these are all different terminology we use with respect to inheritance. Now, what are the advantages of inheritance? Now it is reusing existing code. Once the code has been used or inherited, same code can be used in elsewhere, or we can inherit the same code in some other class. And next one is faster development time and easy to maintain, easy to extend, and memory utilization easy. So this is nothing but these are the advantages of inheritance. Now let us see defining derived class. Now we know how to define a class. Now we have learned in our previous chapters. So we know how to define a class. But now we have to learn in this chapter how to create or how to define a derived class, because it has to be derived from the base class. Now the syntax of this. First one is class is a reserved word, derived class name, this colon, visibility mode, space, base class name. Syntax, open the bracket here, and here we can have member methods or data members of this particular class, and close the class with semicolon. So this is how we define the derived class. Now the syntax, now let us see in this example, the class is a reserved word, is a keyword, and the derived class name here, this is nothing but name of the class, it is nothing but an identifier. Next one is, it shows a derivation from the base class, and here next one is visibility mode, it's specifying type of derivation. Now in next slide we are going to learn what is the definition of visibility mode. And name of the base class, see here the base class, here the base class name, it is the name of the base class from where the properties are inherited. So the meaning of this is from this class the properties are inherited to this class. So that is the meaning of the definition of derived class. Now let us see what are the characteristics of, or what are the points to be remembered while defining a derived class. Here the body of the derived class contains its own data members and member function. So because derived class is also a class, so it may have its own data members and member functions. Like base class definition, the derived class definition must be terminated by a semicolon. So here, if you look at the syntax of this, though it's a derived class, it has to be terminated with a semicolon, as how normally we close or terminate the class. So that is the second point. Next one is, if no visibility mode is specified, by default it takes as a private. Here if you look at observe the syntax of this, so this is visibility mode. Here we have to specify there are three types of visibility mode. They are private, public, and protected. So here we have to specify any of the three. Suppose if we don't specify this, by default it takes visibility mode as a private, and all members of the class except private are inherited. So this is one of the main point to be considered. So when you inherit few properties from the base class, so all the members except private members can be inherited. So private members cannot be inherited to the derived class. So these are the characteristics of a derived class. Now let us see an example for this. So here, for example, this is a class. Here the class name, it is a base class. This is normally how we define the general base class. So here class father, and it is private data members, name, age. And under public, this is access specifier public. Under this, we have so many variables and data members and member function. And we have closed the class with semicolon. So this is a base class. This is a base class because here further to this line, we don't have any syntax. So this is a base class. Now let us see how to derive the classes. So one is, this is public derived class. So suppose if I want to derive the derived class with respect to public visibility mode. And here, this is as per the syntax, class, reserved, class name, and this is visibility mode, and this is name of the base class. So this is class sun. This is the derived class. Class is the keyword or reserved word. Inside this, even this is a class, is a sun, is a derived class. It has its own data members and it inherits few properties from the base class. So by looking at the syntax, we can make out. So here, father, this is the base class. If you look at the previous slide, this is the base class. Here, the class name is father. So this public derived class, it derived the inherits properties from the base class, that is father. And son, this is name of the derived class. And this is the syntax of that. And with the colon, visibility mode plus, and here it is father, that is name of the base class. And again, open the bracket here for the class. And this class ends with the semicolon. So this is also just like other classes, normal base class. It has to close, terminate with a semicolon. Now look at same thing with the private derived class. So here, the same class, this is private derivation. So this is private, we are derived the class with respect to private visibility mode. So accordingly, everything remains same and you can make a difference is only this. So here in our next slide, we are going to learn the difference between private, protected as well as public inheritance or visibility mode. So this is another example. This again a derived class, sun is a derived class, ends with semicolon. And again another derived class, this is protected. Here visibility mode is protected and again this class also ends with a semicolon. So this is how to derive or how to define a derived class. So here these are three different derived classes and derived with respect to different visibility mode. So this is public derivation, private, and this is protected derivation of base class. Now let us see what are the definition of visibility mode. So here the mode basically controls the access specifier to be for inherited members of base class in the derived class. So what is visibility mode? It is nothing but access specifier. So what we have learned in our previous classes, in our previous chapter, access specifier are used to control the access of data members or member function of a class with respect to other classes. Similarly, here we use the word visibility mode. So it is going to control the access to the derived classes. So it's going to control the access to the derived classes. So here there are three types of visibility mode. They are private, public, and protected. Now let us see the definition of these things one by one. Now first one is public inheritance. So what is public inheritance? The public members of a base class become public members of the derived class. So here the public members of a base class, it becomes the public members of the derived class. Whatever the data members declared under public in base class will be the public in the derived class. The private members of base class cannot be inherited to the derived class. So another property is under public, even though it is a public derivation or we use public visibility mode, the private members of a base class cannot be inherited. Means the variables or data members declared under private in base class cannot be inherited. And the protected members of a base class stay protected in a derived class. So here the members declared under protected access specifier or visibility mode or access specifier, it remains protected in the derived class. So this is the definition of public inheritance. So generally in public inheritance, private members cannot be inherited and public members and protected members remain same. Look at the example here. Same base class, class student, data members as well as public member function, close the class with semicolon. And derived class, this is public derivation or public inheritance. Visibility mode is public here. Class name, this is the derived class name. Public, this is access visibility mode. And this is name of the base class. This is the base class here. So this is the same class we are using here. It means that this class is COMP is the name of the class. It inherits properties from the base class, that is student, and visibility mode is public. So this is private data members as well as public member functions. We are closing the class. So this is public inheritance. Now let us move on to next slide. Here let us see the definition of private inheritance. In private inheritance, the public members of a base class become private members of a derived class. One of the properties is that the public members of the base class, this is the private inheritance. Here, the public members of a base class become private members in the derived class. And the private members of base class cannot be inherited to the derived class. This is a common statement. And here, private members cannot be inherited to the derived class. So, the protected members of a base class stay protected in the derived class. So, under private inheritance, one of these 2 points remain same. Protected members will be as the protected in the derived class. Private member cannot be inherited, but the public members of base class becomes the private in the derived class. Now, let us syntax remains syntax class name, visibility mode, and it is superclass or base class. And this class ends with the semicolon. Now let us see the example for this. Base class is student. These are data members and member function. Base class terminated with semicolon. Now this derived class, here COMP is the name of the derived class. This is private inheritance. Student is the base class. So this is the class we are deriving from. So private members as public, and the derived class also ends terminate with a semicolon. So this is an example for private inheritance. Now let us move on to next slide. Here, protected inheritance. So under protected inheritance, the public members of a base class become protected in the derived class. So here, the public members of a base class becomes protected in the derived class, and the private members cannot be inherited, and the protected members of base class stay protected in the derived class. Again, these 2 points remain same, but under protected members, so the public members of a base class becomes protected in derived class under protected inheritance. Again, the syntax, it also same thing, class. This is derived class name, visibility mode plus base class, and data members, and this class ends with a semicolon. Look at the example, base class, student here, ends with the semicolon here with private data members and member functions. And here, derived class, this is a derived class, visibility mode is protected. So it is protected inheritance. And this is student, it is the base class, same what we used in the base class here. So it has its own private members as well as public data members, and it also ends with a semicolon. So this is protected data or this is protected inheritance. Students, we will continue our discussion in my next session. Thank you very much.